Hi, I'm Lawrence Bernstein, a professional speechwriter, and I run greatspeechwriting.co.uk. And irrespective of the sort of speech that you're going to give, there are 2 or 3 key things to bear in mind. Firstly, there is nothing to beat preparation, and hopefully you're not watching this 24 hours before you're due to give your speech, but the more time you leave yourself, the better. Second of all, don't worry about speaking for too long. Often a 5-minute speech is much more powerful and impactful than a 20-minute one, and brevity is often the key. And finally, although a lot of the videos that I've created are about writing a speech, please remember that you can't think about writing and delivering separately. They're one and the same thing. You're writing to make the speech easy to deliver, and if you think of it that way, then the thing should work. So you've got a speech to start, and the first place to start is creating an outline for it. So my first tip is don't ignore this part of the process. It's all too easy, particularly if you're in a rush, just to start writing. But in doing that, you are minimizing your chances of getting this thing right, because a good structure or outline can be absolutely key. So I would start actually not by trying to create sections of your speech or anything like that, but by dumping onto paper everything and anything you can think of that you might need to say. That could cover anything from a thank you to a toast, people you'd like to mention, stories you'd like to include. And so you may end up with pages and pages of information that will just get you thinking about the speech, thinking about the content, and understanding where this structuring process is actually going to work and what it's got to do. At that point, structuring begins, because you can step aside from the information you've got there and look at the best way of pulling it together. And the first thing to do is look at those elements in the speech that you must say, or the must-haves, and those that might be quite nice to bring the thing to life, or the might-haves. And so many speeches lose their effectiveness because people go through a whole list of must-haves at the beginning, like they're ticking a box or going through a school register. And on that basis, by having your must-haves on one hand and your might-haves on the other, the structure will give you the ability to weave those together. Now, in deciding actually the impression you want the speech to create and the core to that structure, you need to work backwards and decide what you actually want your audience to do when the speech is finished. Do you want them to have learnt something? Do you want them to know 1 or 2 key next steps? Do you want them to be laughing their heads off? Do you want them to be crying in empathy with some of the emotional stuff you've given? And whichever outcome you're looking to create, then obviously this needs to play an important part in your structure and understanding where the balance between the humour and sincerity will lie. That balance is something that is not necessarily going to reflect the sincerity of the subject. A eulogy can often be a much funnier speech than the groom's speech at a wedding. A sales presentation with the most turgid information in it will often be brought to life by humour. And again, in your structure, you can be looking for ways of pulling together the emotional and the factual to create something that little bit more original and in tune with what your audience actually want to hear, rather than with what perhaps you thought originally you wanted to tell them. Now, in terms of pulling those bits together, the key is to find a theme. Find something that will act as the cement between the bricks of the various facts and stories you want to tell, or if it's more of a work-based thing, something that will give the audience a reason for listening and something to understand and to latch onto to stick with you over the next few minutes. Now, if it's a speech about an individual, then that theme could be a hobby of theirs, a passion, an interest, something at work, something that you can relate back to explain perhaps in a slightly roundabout way other parts of their life. If it's a work presentation, it could be about benefit, and benefit obviously is going to be the key to anything in the sales arena. But at this stage, I think once you have woven the might-haves and the must-haves together, look for areas you can be funny, look for ways that the various stories can link in together, then you probably have a structure provision already in place, and it's time to do another brain dump and work out what parts of those structure are lacking in detail and which parts probably need some editing down. And it's only at that stage, when you have something scribbled on paper in front of you, that I'd even begin the process of writing. because writing can be very easy where there's a good structure in place, and if not, it can go on forever. Obviously, these are high-level tips, and if you'd like more information, please have a look at greatspeechwriting.co.uk or give me a call, and hopefully I could help you take your speech further.